together at the mountaintop, champions of college football.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to your opening drive for the week of April the 7th, 2025, i.e. the last week of spring ball. As always, I'm Jeremy the Couch Potato. Opposite side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. We are here courtesy of the Barn Baseball and Softball Academy. What is good, sir?
Oh, not much, man. Coming off a crazy weekend for the Slater household. Obviously, this is probably going to be dropping later in the week, but we got a state champion in the Slater household, man. Willa and her gymnastics team went up to Niles, Ohio, took care of business, and won a state championship. And so that was pretty cool. It was intense. Never been a part of anything like it, but you know, they had fun. It was nuts, man. It was nuts. A lot of pressure for 7 and 8 year olds
For sure.
to be out there, man. But all is good over here, man. How's things with you?
Good on this front too. We pretty low key weekend, so that was nice after a super busy weekend last weekend doing the autograph thing. Met up with some guys this week, got them their stuff. So yeah, pretty low key though. We'll take that though. You know,
Yeah.
we're headed into the springtime. Always gives me like the nostalgia because I don't know what to do with myself because we did baseball for so long. So you know, maybe we'll go catch a game somewhere. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, big week for the Buckeyes really though. Kind of a big, we'll call it 9 days, give or take. Had Student Appreciation Day on Saturday. Have the last week of spring practice this week. Spring game coming up this weekend. Big recruiting weekend. You know, recruiting momentum and full force. So yeah, a lot of kind of closure, I guess you would say. You know, we're gonna have the spring portal coming up, the draft. You know, we always have something to talk about.
Yeah.
We kind of have 4 things we want to hit on this week. We'll start, you know, the scrimmage on Saturday, Student Appreciation Day. Place was packed.
Yeah, it was, man.
As it should be.
Yeah.
They got to see about an hour and 15 minutes, it sounds like, of 11-on-11 action.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, you know, used to spring scrimmages were kept under wraps, you know, so tight. You know, what do you think about, like, what's the logic there, you think?
That's a good question, man. I don't really know. In spring ball, you're not really showing too much. You know, you're showing your base stuff, and so I always wonder like what the logic was about keeping things under wraps. Obviously, right now, and it was Matt Rule that came out and said it. You know, you don't want to put too much out there because you know the guys are going to start getting nosy, and colleges are going to start trying to pick your players, and so there may be some logic behind that. But like you said, it was packed in there, man. You know, you saw the sea of people that were around Jeremiah Smith. You know, just watching him stretch and everything like that. So it is good to get you know some access to the guys, and especially to see a live scrimmage where the quarterbacks are live, and it is good for the fans to get an idea of what we're going to be getting. You know, you want to see if Julian Sand's going to be tough. You want to see if Lincoln Keenholz is going to be tough. You want to see how big Ethan Onyanwa is. You know what I mean? Like you want to see it. The hype is real about some of these guys. And so it is good to get access to them. But, you know, the logic behind it, I really don't know. But, you know, I trust Coach Day, whatever it is, you know, we'll just follow him into battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple guys who, you know, I think we all have heard kind of jumped out. I think the one that I don't think it surprises me because we've talked about him a lot, but to hear everybody talk about Bo Jackson, you know, everybody's like, you know, this whole CJ or Donaldson, James People thing's not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
You know, Bo, it just sounds like we thought. He runs hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a guy that, you know, multiple people on the beat and the recruiting circles always said, had he been able to stay healthy, had he been able to play his senior season healthy, that he would have been, you know, a top 5 back likely in the country. He would have been more of a national recruit.
Right.
But because, at St. V's, he was St. Via or St. Joe's, wherever he
Villa
went to high.
into St.
Yeah,
Joseph.
there we go. He was counted on both sides of the ball. And so like he played through a lot of things that may have hindered his film, his tape, and different things like that. And so we are finally seeing like a fully healthy version of Bo Jackson. And he doesn't look like a freshman, having been down
No.
there at practice and seen him up close. A buddy of mine and we spent some time following Coach Locke around, and like he looks the part. And running back is that position where, as a freshman, you can come in and play pretty early, as we've seen multiple times. Obviously with Zeke, we saw it with Trey. We saw it with James Peebles a little bit last year. We saw it with J.K. Dobbins. And so like this is a spot where a freshman can come in and play. And I love seeing that he's getting some love, man. I think he is a dude. And I think the Buckeyes have 3, even 4 really good backs that they could depend on. And as we know, if we want to make a run, we're going to need them. Like we are going to need that depth. And so I love hearing the way people are talking about Bo Jackson, because he's going to be, if we're going to do bold predictions, man, I think he's going to be the next great one that we have at Ohio State.
Yeah, I think that's I don't know how bold that is.
Yeah,
that's
a good
it's
point.
very,
Yeah.
very legit. Another guy, and again, this is another guy we've talked about a lot. So I don't know if this is a sign that maybe we're not just a couple of schmucks. Aaron Scott,
Yeah.
held his own with JJ on multiple plays. And he wasn't the only one that showed some moxie, I guess you would say, in guarding JJ. But I think consistently Aaron Scott, from all of the reviews and the eyewitness accounts, I guess you would say, balled out. Maybe not balled out, but held his own.
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget Aaron Scott was one of the top recruits in the country. This is a guy who is 6'1", around 200 pounds, 190 pounds. Like he can ball. He is an elite corner. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got all the intangibles to be that next great corner at Ohio State. He fits that mold of what BIA wants in their corners. And you couple him with Jermaine Matthews and Devin Sanchez and IGB, like you have such an elite group of corners. And so he's using that to fuel his fire.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is that forgotten guy. And I'm not ruling out that he's going to see playing time on Saturdays. Like this is a guy who's going to force himself, in my opinion, into that rotation. He's got the confidence, he's got the swagger, he's got the chip on his shoulder. That is what you want in a defensive back. That is what you want in a corner. He is not going to back down from a challenge. I can tell you this, having gone to Urbana University, rest in peace to the Blue Knights, having spent a lot of time in Springfield, Ohio. If you're from Springfield, you're not going to back down from a challenge. I've never met anybody from Springfield, Ohio, who is afraid to compete. And, being from Springfield, it doesn't matter who you are, who you're going up against. It doesn't matter if you're, Deion Sanders. It doesn't matter. I'm lining up. I'm going to play ball. I dare you to try to get past me. And you may get me this time. You may get me the next time, but I'm going to keep coming back. And that is who Aaron Scott is. And so, listen, don't look past him, because this kid can play. And Devin Sanchez, who I think is going to be a star, he's going to have to earn it. Like he's not just going to get, that CB3 spot. And Jermaine Matthews isn't just going to get the CB2 spot. Like they're going to have to work. And IGB is not just going to be anointed as the top guy. Like they are all going to work and push each other to be great. And so that's a good problem to have. And I think we have 4 corners who would start anywhere in the country.
Yeah, I mean, if not 5, Bryce West. And a guy we're going to talk about a little bit later. I mean, obviously, Miles Lockhart's making strides.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I guess you would say the star of the show, somewhat because of the position, sounds like it was Lincoln Kienholz.
Yeah.
Again, Lincoln Kienholz is not a slouch. He is, and we'll dive into the quarterback battle, some more here in a minute. But he dotted up. I think it was Carnell.
Yeah.
In the end zone, and Man, it was a dime.
Yeah,
It was an
beautiful.
absolute dime.
Yeah, it was a great throw. And Lincoln's an easy guy to root for, coming from South Dakota, all the way to Ohio. He's a tough kid. He's a competitor. He's a freakish athlete. He's just a good guy. He's an easy guy to root for. He didn't run away from a challenge. And he's experienced, and he's going to, as far as being here as a Buckeye now, he's going into his third year. Like, he understands what it takes to be a Buckeye quarterback. He's seen people do it at a high level. He saw what Will Howard was able to do. He saw, the scrutiny that Kyle McCord got as his 1 year as a starter. Like, he's seen the highs, he's seen the lows, he's seen what it means to be a Buckeye quarterback, and he's seen what it is at its peak, and he's seen what it is at its low points. So he knows what it takes to be that quarterback, and he's got the ability. It's just a matter of getting the reps, and now he's getting those reps, and you're starting to see that a little bit. And so, listen, this quarterback battle is going to be neck and neck, and we're going to be, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but he's a player. He's going to make plays with his legs. He's got solid arm strength. He can make all the throws. He can do a lot of good things, and, don't rule him out, man. Like, this is somebody who can really, really compete, and he's not going to run away from that challenge.
No, not at all. Those were the big ones to me. What else have you seen out there from the scrimmage that was kind of a takeaway for you?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was the amount of depth that we have in the secondary. That was an area of concern that I had originally, not at the cornerback position, but the safety position. And when I say that, I was not taking into consideration that Fahim Delane was going to come in and be a guy that, was going to potentially see the field right away, right? That was a guy that I was, I guess because he wasn't talked about enough. Like, he was this top recruit, but it was almost like you took him for granted. And now you hear him on campus and you hear him making noise. And then, you hear him talking about Malik Harrison, and you hear some of the things that they're saying about him. And it's just like, man, I actually, and obviously Jalen McClain, Leroy Roker, it's just like, man, I think we're going to be all right at safety. You know what I mean? And you hear these guys back there are having good springs, and, Caleb Downs they're really taking it light with him. Obviously, he's the best player in the country on the defensive side of the ball. He doesn't really need to do much this spring. Let these young guys get a lot of reps. And so I love hearing that these guys are having good springs. I love to hear that they're out there making plays on Saturday, flying around, playing fast and physical. The other person I was really happy to hear, obviously I'm a defensive coach. I'm going to naturally go to the defensive side of the ball. It's Peyton Pierce. I think when you get guys like this who really step up, Matt Patricia can now use the versatility of a CJ Hicks, of an Arvell Reese, to the maximum potential. Like, you can use that now to the fullest potential because you have a Peyton Pierce that you can trust and line up again or next to Sonny Styles. So now you can move, Arvell Reese around and play like a true flex position. He's rushing a quarterback one play. He's playing in the middle as a linebacker one play. You're really moving him around in different spots. And so I'm so excited to see that creativity. And it's because of guys like Peyton Pierce. You just hear, on Saturday, even fans were talking about it on social media. He was just flying around, making plays. And so that is some of the biggest takeaways for me on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, we'll talk about it here in a second. We talk about black stripes and everything. Quincy Porter, he's really good.
Real deal.
He's really good. I don't think people really expected him to take that leap right away when he got to campus. But he was a 5-star for a reason. And so that's really, really important for people to realize. And then I'm just still enamored with the offensive line depth. It's just so hard for me to flip that switch so fast from not having that depth to like, wow, like we have, like, I'm not worried about our interior offensive line.
No.
I'm not worried. Also Saravel, we may need to pick up another tackle in the portal just maybe for some depth purposes. Right. But then you hear some good things about the Armstrong twins and how they're developing. So then it's like, well, do we actually need to do that? So it's just like, I think the offensive line is in a good place. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, they were not. And
No.
so it's just crazy how fast those things can turn. So those are like some of the big takeaways for me, not just from Saturday, but from all of spring so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And that offensive line conversation is crazy. I mean, like the Armstrongs. We all knew the Armstrongs were not coming into Ohio State ready to play at that level.
Yeah.
Their bodies needed to change. They were kind of tweeners position wise, honestly. I think one of them played tackle in high school, and I don't see either one of them playing tackle in college.
Yeah.
I think they're both going to be interior guys. But I guess that leads us to we'll kind of pivot. I was going to go quarterback battle next since we were talking about Lincoln, but let's just go ahead and go to some guys we think need to have a big spring game.
Yeah.
The first two guys I listed, and this actually goes deeper than these two, is Tegra and Austin Sareveld.
Yeah.
One of those guys has a chance to pretty much lock up a spot.
Yeah.
I know Saraveld's been getting more of that rotational flex tackle guard look, but man, Tegra looks like a dude that could play tackle still.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's his footwork that doesn't do that, but then you look at that second tier of guys too, the Armstrongs, Josh Padilla, those guys. I think it could be a good day for them to have, just really show that they're continuing to improve.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think they're obviously getting Austin Sareveld. I don't think he's out of the mix when it comes to the interior. I think, they're preparing him. Obviously, he's got the flexibility to play tackle. I don't think they would have him playing tackle if they didn't think that he could play there on Saturdays. I don't think they're fully ruling him out as a possibility of starting at tackle either. I also think they're not ruling, Onyanwa out at starting at either left or right tackle, right? I think those are things that are still possibilities. And so I do think for Sareveld, it's going to be, he's got to continue to have a good spring. I think Saturday will be a big day for him. Tegra as well. I think it will be good. The guy on the offensive line for me that I want to see have a good day, and whatever the format is that we're going to have on Saturday, I want to see Ian Moore have a good day. This is a guy that, you and I are big fans of. We think that this guy could be, a really good starting right tackle for us in the future. This is a guy that's going to provide good depth for us. Phillip Daniels isn't coming in and just taking that right tackle spot from him. Like, this is a really good battle. And I want to see him really play well. He's talked about his battles with Arvell Reese. He's talked about his battles with CJ Hicks. Having watched him in practice, I really want to see it translate on Saturday to him having a good day out there. And so offensive line wise, Ian Moore is the guy that I'm really going to be paying attention to. I really want to see him have a good day against our defensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And, CJ Hicks, I don't know how much burn he'll get, but that'll be interesting to see. Another guy I put down, not so much because we have questions about him, but because of a guy you just mentioned a little bit ago, kind of jumping out from the scrimmage, and Peyton Pierce. I think we need to see Arvell Reese really show that he's going to continue to grow, improve, and really say, okay, Sonny and I have two of these down. And if we're going to go to a third guy, then I think Peyton Pierce, if we're going to go to a true 4-3, which I don't think we will. I think Matt Patricia really does like to use a lot of flex hybrid type, guys.
Yeah.
But, again, it's not because of anything about Arvell. I just think because Peyton Pierce is coming on so strong.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, I think Peyton Pierce really stepping up. I really think it allows Coach Patricia to show and use that versatility of Arvell Reese. I think Arvell Reese is a guy, he's just so big. He's just so athletic.
Yeah.
You could just do so much with him. And so that's a hard guy for me to just say, hey, because of this, you're just going to be an inside backer. Like it's hard for me to lock him into that one spot. And so it'll be interesting to see like if they move him around at all. I just don't know if they will for the spring game. But it will be interesting to see. I think on the defensive side, obviously I want to see CJ Hicks's burst off the ball. That's one thing I want to see
Yeah.
on the defensive side. I saw it live in practice, and he's an extremely explosive player. You guys have probably read online, whether it's 11 Warriors or some of the message boards about some of the physicalness and the fights and different things like that at practice. Well, I can confirm now that it's been out there for a little bit that there have been multiple of there's a lot of shoving going on, and a lot of that is because sometimes guys on the defensive line are getting off the ball, or hands are getting under face masks and different things like that. A couple times it was CJ Hicks who was really being chippy and really getting under the offensive line skin and doing some different things like that. And so like he plays with a chip on his shoulder. And so I want to see him start to put it together. And so I want to see that explosiveness. Obviously, he's got natural ability when it comes to that, but I want to see him put it together. Some of those pass rush moves, I want to see him really start to develop, who he is as a pass rusher. Everybody talks about, he's got to be able to defend the run. Yes, he does. And I fully agree with that. But understand what he's going to be used for. He's not going to end up being an every down guy. I hope he develops into that, and that'd be great. But he's going to be used in situations where we need to get pressure immediately. And so I really want to see him start to put together that package of his moves so he can get to the quarterback. He does have a few ones that he showed and showcased in practice. He does a really good job of getting skinny. He does a really good job, getting skinny and dipping underneath of the punches of the offensive tackles. He's got violent hands. He does a great job attacking wrist and doing different things like that. And so I'm just excited to see that explosion on Saturday. I think it'll be good. And then the other people I'm excited for, Logan George on the defensive side of the ball, defensive end transfer from Idaho State. Had an opportunity to meet him at their practice. He is a phenomenal young man. Small world. I know his defensive coordinator from Idaho State. He was a Bluffton Beaver, which is small world. He was a defensive coordinator at Bluffton. Had a chance to chat with him over some defensive clinic stuff, it's small world. And so he's a guy that I think is going to help and provide depth. Obviously, this is a huge shift in talent, right? So going from Idaho State to Ohio State, I want to see what he's able to do so we can kind of see him live and in action. That's a guy I want to see. And another guy on the defensive line I want to see have a good day, Will Smith.
Yeah.
We've talked about Jarquez Carter. We saw Eric Mensah lose his black stripe. We've talked about, guys that we need to step up, Taiwan Malone and all this stuff. Will Smith is a guy that I think is a little undersized, gets a little overlooked, but he's got all the tools. Obviously, he's got the traits, the DNA to be really good. I want to see him put it together. That is a guy that we're rooting for. I want to see him have a good day Saturday. So he's going to be a guy that I'm really paying close attention to because, again, on the defensive line, if we can find more depth on the interior, that's less that we have to go look for in the portal. And so I really want to see him have a good day.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The only other group that I put down, and again, I think that we could realistically see 6 wide receivers play this year, if not 7. But I think, we could see that group of 3 swap out that we used to see a little bit. So I'm really interested to see if anybody from the Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Bryson Rogers group finds a way to start to maybe show, hey, I'm the guy, for that 3rd/4th receiver spot.
Yeah. I personally think that we're going to start to see my guy, Brandon Ennis, start to separate himself. I am just in the press conferences, the way that he's walking around, he's starting to get a little chip on his shoulder, right? People are forgetting who he is. And I think, all the things that we loved about Emeka, BI can do. And so I really think you're going to start to see him really work to separate himself because he can do everything. And I think that's going to be the thing that separates him and keeps him in that number 3 receiver spot. I do think Quincy Porter is forcing himself into the conversation of having to be, that fourth receiver. And that's not a knock on Bryson Rodgers. I think Bryson Rodgers is going to obviously push and make, Brandon Ennis work, and they could rotate. There could be a situation where they are rotating. Bryson Rodgers is a very good route runner. But at Quincy Porter, you just can't take away his size. Like that is something that we need, I think, out there on the field. And so I'm excited for that receiver group, man. It's just like to hear some of the things J.J. Smith was saying about Quincy Porter.
Yeah.
Like that's high remarks. So that receiver group is just so talented, man. And I'm excited to see who steps up on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously the most important position, the quarterback battle. Coach Day, not tipping his hand, has not tipped his hand all spring. After Saturday, everybody was talking about Lincoln. I still think at the end of the day that Julian Sayin comes out as the starter. I don't know why. Do I think that Day has a clubhouse leader at the end of spring ball? Yeah, but I don't know that it's like set in stone.
Yeah. Last year at this time, we were talking about Devin Brown being the clubhouse leader and after spring. I fully expect this thing and believe that this thing is neck and neck. I do think that Coach Day is really playing it close to vest. He understands, how important he's got to get this right.
Yes.
He's got to get it right. And he knows that. I do think that it is a very close battle. Haven't been at the practices and watched it a little bit. I do see why he's saying that it's neck and neck. They both do some really good things. They both do some things that it's like, man, they need to work on that. You can tell they're both haven't started a game in a while. You know what I mean? They just do some things that young quarterbacks do. They both really take command of the offense. There are things that I watched that I was like, man, that's really like Julian really steps up and he's really, a franchise type quarterback. And then you see, the way that Lincoln competes and the way that people get excited because he competes so hard. It's like, okay, like, I could see why people want to play for him. And then you see the clip of the scrimmage where Julian takes off from the 4-yard line trying to dive into the end zone and gets destroyed. But you see the offensive guys, like offensive players love that. Like,
yeah,
it's a 5-star quarterback who's trying to win the job. He doesn't get in the end zone. He gets his head knocked off, but he's competing. Like he's like doing whatever it takes to try to get a touchdown and help his team win. And so, listen, I do think it's neck and neck. This thing's going to go probably all the way to August. You've got to look at it multiple ways. And then unfortunately in the transfer portal era, you risk a lot by naming a quarterback at the end of the spring. And I hate saying that because these are both some great young men that would start anywhere in the country I hate saying this, but if you come out and you say Julian Sayin is a starter right now, then okay, now your quarterback room is 2 guys because Lincoln's going to say, okay, I'm going to go leave. Or if you come out and you say Lincoln's a quarterback, well, and Julian's like, okay, well, then I'm going to go leave. Right. And so it's like, those are things that you risk. And I know it's crazy, but that's just the world that we live in right now. And so, there is a lot that goes into these decisions, but I do think this is a very close battle. I think both of these guys are starting caliber for Ohio State. I, like you, though, do think that Julian will eke this thing out at the end, but I would not be shocked that, this is something that goes into August because I do think Lincoln is a very capable young man, and I do think that he could win this battle as well. But I think Julian has the intangibles to be the guy, but I know Lincoln's going to keep battling because he's just a competitor, and that's all he's done. All Lincoln has done his entire life is win. And everything he's done, he's won. State championship in every sport. I win. And so would not shock me if he won.
Excuse me. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's a good spot to be in. I mean, and let's, obviously the other piece to the puzzle, because we saw it with the Burrow-Haskins battle, let's hope both guys stay healthy throughout the whole thing.
Yes.
Because who's to say if Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt in spring, that he's not at Ohio State, and it's Dwayne Haskins that is at, the
Yeah.
2019 LSU team.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Dwayne, later this week, RIP Dwayne. It'll be a year later on this week. I think on Wednesday, the 9th, I think it'll be.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I just remember that because I was in North Carolina when it happened.
Okay.
So, yeah, shout out, rest in peace to Wayne. And then obviously with spring ball, another thing that we've kind of talked about, we threw tidbits in, black stripes.
Yeah.
You see those things start to come off in spring ball. By my count, we are at 5 guys that have lost them this spring. Started with Max Clare, transfer tight end from Purdue. Not a big surprise. This kid came in here to make himself a lot of money and become an NFL, tight end.
Yeah.
And then your guy, Dominic Kirks,
Yeah.
Miles Lockhart, Eric Mensah, and then Saturday at the scrimmage, Quincy Porter becomes the first freshman
Yeah.
to lose his black stripe.
Yeah.
What are your takeaways on, those 5 guys that have lost them?
Man, I think I love seeing those guys, who came in. Maybe they came in June last year, came in late as freshmen, and they're losing their black stripe. I know how much that means to them to finally actually be a part of the team. Like that is something that, they're fighting for. I want to get this off. I know how much that means to a guy like Dominic Kirks and Miles Lockhart. Miles Lockhart's coming from Arizona, right? Like this is, he wanted to be a Buckeye, man. And I know how much he's been working. He's been making waves this spring. Dominic Kirks was a guy who flipped very late in the process. And now, he's starting to really play, some really good football. And, Eric Mensah, people forgot about him. This is a big dude, man.
Another interior
He's
guy.
a big individual. To see him do it, to talk about his black stripe and say something in his native language, like that was pretty sick. And so, yeah, man, like it's pretty cool. And then Quincy Porter, my gosh, just added to the list of just freshman wide receivers. Like I can't speak highly enough about that young man. Like just seeing him in practice was, I kept having to look at the roster to make sure I was looking at, like, am I sure this is a freshman? Like I kept having to look, like this is Quincy Port fresh. Okay, it's a freshman. Like that dude is just, you can't forget about him. Like he is going to be a very, very good player for us.
Yeah, and the cool thing there is, he wasn't a late bloomer, but he got the late 5-star bump. And his recruitment really went crazy toward the end. There was a lot of flip talk and everything like that. So to get a kid like that to stick is always good.
Yeah.
A poster on the 11 Warriors message board actually went through and did the diligence for every recruiting class from 2020 to 2024. The first 5 guys from each class to lose their black stripes. Now, this is not the first guys each year. It's each freshman class of that class. And it's really crazy. We've hyped up Quincy Porter since he committed. Well, there's a reason he was the first one to lose his black stripe, too. Class of 2020, first 5 guys. JSN, Court Williams, who I was told multiple times by guys on the team in those couple years, you're going to love Court. Well, then obviously injuries derailed Court.
Yeah.
G. Scott, Julian Fleming, and Ty Hamilton.
Yeah.
Pretty good company.
Pretty good company.
Obviously, Julian Fleming, unfortunately, things aren't going to pan out the way we wanted them to with Julian Fleming. Is somebody going to take a chance on Julian in the draft? Yeah. But it's not looking good, Julian. Like, what did all of the pundits miss there?
Yeah. Yeah, Julian is, he was a great Buckeye. He did some really good things for us. He was a leader. He did some great stuff as a blocker. He was basically a flex tight end out there for us. He did some really, really good stuff. Obviously, he battled some injuries. some major hamstring issues, right? Those are some tough things to have to come back from. Obviously, he got the COVID year, his 5th year. He graduated from Ohio State, wanted to go back home and play. Never fault a kid for doing that. Obviously, going home didn't really work out for him either. I hope things work out for him in the NFL. He's got ability. He can go up get it. He's got hands. Speed's always going to be his issue. He did not run as fast as 40 time at his pro day. And so it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure if he doesn't get picked in the late rounds, I'm sure he'll be an undrafted free agent. Somebody will take a chance and he'll get an opportunity in a rookie mini camp or throughout the preseason. But that is a guy, man, who when he came in, he was the real deal. Unfortunately, he just had to deal with a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, as a blocker, though, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, the class of 2021 might be the most star-studded top 4 for sure. Jack Sawyer, Marvin Harrison Jr., Travion Henderson, Emeka Ibuka, and Ironton, Ohio's own Reed Carrico.
Oh, forgot about him.
Yeah, WVU, now. But man, those first 4 guys, I mean, talk about the correlation. Like it's right there.
Yeah, that's a good group, man. Jeez, that's a really good group.
Yeah. So as good as 21 is, 22, unfortunately, Kai Stokes, Caden Curry, Jair Brown, CJ Hicks, and Caleb Brown.
Okay.
22 offsets 21 as it sits. Now, CJ Hicks, Caden Curry, we have a chance for redemption.
Yeah.
23, Carnell Tate, Jelani Thurman, Malik Hartford, some kid from Findlay named Luke Montgomery, and Bryson Rogers.
Yeah.
23 shaping up to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Last year, JJ Smith, Julian Sayin, Jalen McLean, Edric Houston, and James Peoples. So there's definitely, it's really cool to see though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And that's just a cool tradition too. Like getting your black. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's shout out to that person for doing that research, man.
Yeah, for sure. Because the original poster had incorporated it to where it was just the first 5 black stripes for a season. So that included transfers, second groups. So like the 2020 year, Trey Sermon was actually the first guy to lose his black stripe.
Gotcha.
And then in 21, you had Jacoby Callan lose his first. 22, Tanner McAllister and Chip Trainum make the top 5. 23, you have Tegra, George Fitzpatrick, and IGB. Then Carnell Tate and Tristan Gebbia. And then 24, you'd have Jeremiah, Brennan Schramm, who Brennan Schramm gets a lot of love in the program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a dude that plays hard. You'll see him make some plays on Saturday probably during the spring game.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool to see. So obviously next week we'll be able to talk spring game recap, which I think it's going to be a true game. I think, obviously I don't know what the scoring process is going to be. Ryan Day likes to do offense defense. So I think that's probably going to be what they do there as opposed to the Scarlet versus Gray. Allows them to hit, but not hit, at that point. But yeah, that kind of brings it, sums it up for the week, and non-Buckeye world stuff. This coming weekend, we've got the Masters. I know we both love that. I'd love to see Bryson get a green jacket.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's going to happen, but it would be cool. But yeah, what else you got?
Man, I got nothing, man. Been a crazy time in the Slater household. Got to help my sister move this weekend, so it's going to be another crazy weekend over here. But but with family pictures too, old buddy.
That should be fun with the girls.
Yeah. So this is going to be a crazy weekend, man, but we're all good over here.
All right. Well, yeah, as always, we appreciate you guys. Quick shout out. Dude named Joe Hall. I think I've talked about Joe back before when he started this. Joe, a year or two ago, walked from Delaware to San Francisco on foot.
Wow.
Joe is restarting a journey. He had began it, and then he had some medical issues come up, and he also lost his father in the same time. He is walking the Continental 48, stopping in all 48 state capitals. Restarted the walk, or is restarting the walk this week. Mental health awareness. That's why he's doing it. So shout out Joe. It's wild, man. He does a really good job of keeping people informed on the goings on his Facebook page called Haul Across the Country. So when he restarts the walk later this week, make sure you guys check it out too. And we will see you guys next week.